Hey guys, it's Mike Hanley from HanleyStrength.com, and Carly's laughing already. So this is our first episode. We are doing a podcast for our members, and basically the reason we want to do this is just to give more information to our members. We want to try to educate everyone at Hanley Strength as much as we can, and sometimes we can't do that while we're training, right? Sometimes we need some, non-training time to talk about things and questions that you guys may have. So that's what we're here to do, right?
Yes.
You cool?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm gonna check. We have. Want to check? I just put out on our Facebook group. If anybody had any questions, but Carly's got a list of questions, and we are going to talk about carbs today in episode 1. Carbs is like the double-edged sword. It's the topic of everybody when they're trying to lose fat, so we might as well talk about it, right?
Yes, first episode.
Right? All right, so there's no questions right now.
Okay, but I have some. All right, so just to start off, what are carbohydrates?
Carbohydrates are sugars, starches, and fibers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are essential for our energy system, right? They're one of the macronutrients, right? So there's 3 macronutrients. There's protein, carbs, and fat. Carbohydrates are made up of sugars, starches, and fibers, and they're our body's main source of energy.
Okay.
It's really the simplest way to put it.
Okay, so the body, when they go to break down things, they break down carbs first to use them for energy?
So they're going to break down carbohydrates in as far as energy systems. I don't necessarily, I'm not going to say that they break them down first, but your body needs carbohydrates to fuel it for exercise, for tons of things. So I think that it's going to break down all macronutrients like at the same time. But you're going to break down carbohydrates to use as your fuel source.
Okay, so if carbohydrates are so important and they are one of the macronutrients, why do people want to get rid of carbs?
Because they're scared that carbohydrates make you fat.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
That's what everybody thinks. Everybody thinks that carbohydrates cause you to gain fat. And it's just not true. Calories, a surplus of calories makes you gain weight. And that weight could be, you can gain muscle from a surplus of calories, or you can gain fat from a surplus of calories, right? But it doesn't matter what macronutrient you have in abundance. If your calories are too much, and they could be too much of protein and fat, you're not going to lose weight.
Okay, so how could it hurt me if I were to cut out carbs?
So the number one thing that you're going to feel is you feel like shit, right? Your energy levels drop tremendously when you cut your carbs. So why would you want to feel like that? Like, why would anyone want to feel terrible on a daily basis?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just, if they're your main source of energy and you need energy for your day, then why would you cut out the thing that's going to give you energy?
Very true. And what is the difference between a high-fat diet and a high-carb diet?
So it's pretty self-explanatory. A high-fat diet is going to have more fat, and so you're going to talk about, look, so you're going to have a low carb, or all right, so we'll talk about high fat diets. We're going to talk about the ketogenic diet. We'll talk about the Atkins. Those are like the 2 main diets.
Yeah.
Right? Here's what people do, and they don't realize that they're doing some damage by doing it. When you do one of those no carb, high fat diets, you have to allot for the same amount of calories. So if your calorie amount is X amount of calories and you drop your carbs, you have to replace those calories with the same amount of calories. So how do you do that? Are you going to up your protein or are you going to up your fat?
Up your fat.
Right. But most people don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? So they think, let's just drop our carbs, eat protein, and eat a little, like they don't know how many grams of fat they should take in. Right? So they wind up under eating, and yeah, they're going to lose weight, but is it the right type of weight they're losing? Are they losing fat or are they losing muscle and fat?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so that's where people go wrong is when they cut carbs, they don't replace those carbs with calories from another macronutrient. So if you have 1,800 calories you need to have, and that's a deficit for you, you need to, and you cut 800 calories of carbs, you need to replace those 800 calories with fat and protein. If you just cut 800 calories off your diet and you're only eating 1,000 calories, you're probably going to do more damage than good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Would you say that the keto and the Atkins and the high fat diets aren't long lasting? Like you end up gaining that weight back?
Yeah, of course. I mean, think about your experience with people that have done that, right? So there's a time and place to limit carbohydrates. If you have, here we'll talk about fat loss and we'll talk about performance, right? People that are looking to improve performance need more carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
People that are looking to lose fat, they probably can limit their amount of carbohydrates to a smaller amount, right? What happens with the no carb diets is people cut their carbs, they lose a ton of water weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what carbs are, is water in your muscle. So they lose a ton of water weight. They, you know, they feel good for a little while, right? Once the ketones kick in, you feel good. But the sustainability of that, right, is not very long lasting.
Yeah.
And so when they add carbs back into their diet, are they adding them slowly and dropping some fat out, or are they just going off the diet, right? And that's what a lot of people do is they just do it for a certain amount of time and then they go back to eating normal or overeating, and then they wind up screwing that up anyway.
How does it affect your body when you cut out carbs and then you like carbo load like crazy when you go back?
Yeah, so it becomes harder. Like you're basically like yo-yo dieting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when you do that to your thyroid and your metabolism, every time you do that, it becomes harder and harder. Like you're not improving your metabolic rate. So when you take fat loss, you want to be able to eat more food and burn more fat,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the improvement of your metabolic rate is a better route than always just looking at cutting calories and trying to lose body fat. So, the danger is, when you do this drastic to like it swings, it's like a pendulum of, I'm drastically doing this and then I'm drastically doing that. And that's just going to screw up your thyroid and your metabolism. So every time you do that, it gets harder and harder and harder to lose fat. You have to correct your metabolism before you can even burn some fat. And that's what happens to people that are always doing a diet.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of eating healthy, in like a normal amount of food, maybe cutting some portions. Like instead of cutting a macronutrient, why don't you just cut a portion of all three macronutrients out of your meal,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you have this meal that on the plate, why don't you just cut everything in half and eat half of it? you're going to lose weight,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're cutting your calories. So your calories are less than what you're putting out.
Yeah.
So that's really what happens with people that, immediately go to like the no carb. You'll lose weight. You're going to lose water weight. You're going to drop some weight right away. But you're going to feel like shit.
Mm-hmm.
And your performance is going to suffer. You're going to have no energy through the day. And like, what happens when you want to have carbs?
Yeah.
Like, is that a way to live?
Yeah.
Are you going to live like that? And to me, I just don't think it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I've done very low carb diets. I've been able to sustain them for a period of time to get a leanness. And then it's, after that, I have to come back out of that. If I stay in that, I'm just going to wind up losing muscle. I'm not going to perform as well as I want to. And to me, that's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And too many people just don't do it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have a question that's a little off topic. So you mentioned when you yo-yo diet, how it messes up your metabolism. So someone who doesn't have a good metabolism, how long does it typically take for them, like, to get their metabolism back to where it should be?
it depends. It depends on age. It depends on how long it's been damaged. It depends on, so many different factors, hormone levels. So, someone that's had years of starving and overeating and starving and overeating, it might take them a little while. It might take 16 to 18 months for someone to, create that metabolism that they need to burn healthy body fat. You know what I mean? But there's no set amount of time. Like, you can't put a time on, okay, so your metabolism's damaged. It's going to take X amount of time for you, and it's going to take X amount of time for me
Mm-hmm.
to go back to normal. I don't think there's a time for that time frame. I would say if there was a time frame, it'd be like anywhere from 6 to 18 months,
Mm-hmm.
3 to 18 months, something along those lines. If you're doing all the right things for 6, 12, 18 months, you're probably going to see some really good change.
Mm-hmm. Feel you.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I don't have any more questions.
No questions.
Mm-mm,
So
I'm
you want to
done.
talk about? Let's talk about the differences in carbohydrates, right? So people get scared. All right. So sugars
Mm-hmm.
and fibers, right, and complex carbs, right. So people will fruit. Let's take fruit, and then let's take starches. And people are scared of starches, but they'll eat fruit, right? So fruit is a sugar, right? There's some fruits that are like high in sugar and low in fiber.
Mm-hmm.
They're also a simple carbohydrate, right? Where there's a complex carbohydrate, right? And there's a simple. And the complex carbohydrate, which is like a sweet potato, a brown rice, and oatmeal, is going to last longer and burn slower in your body. Whereas the sugar burns up really fast,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's certain times of the day that a sugar is more beneficial for you and a complex carb isn't, and then vice versa, right? So people think, oh, I'll just have fruit, but I won't eat any starches, when in fact, you probably can do better with eating starches
Mm-hmm.
and less fruit. And so you just have to be careful of when you're eating what. Just because strawberries are healthy, if you eat them at night, but you work out in the morning, it might not necessarily be the best thing for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, so you got to be careful. The best time to have sugars is around the workout or earlier in the day, right? The best time to have more fibrous carbohydrates is the other times of the day, right? So, so if you work out later in the day, you can have your carbohydrates later in the day. If you work out earlier in the day, try to have your carbohydrates earlier in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But to, if you worked out 6 in the morning and then at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night, you're having pineapple, it's probably not the best thing for you.
Got it.
You probably want to stick with greens later in the day and have the pineapple right after your workout, because your body will use the pineapple more to its benefit right after your workout than it will later on when you're sitting on the couch or, driving around, whatever you're doing. Make sense?
Yes.
The other thing that people don't realize is the leaner you are, the more tolerant you are of carbohydrates, right?
I don't think so.
All right, we had a little technical difficulties, right? So what were we talking about? So here's what people don't realize is the higher your body fat is, the more you have to limit your carbohydrate intake, right? You don't have to get rid of it, but you have to limit it. The less, the higher your body fat is, the more sensitive you are. So think of it like inventory, right? If there was shelves of inventory in a store, right? Someone that has a higher body fat percentage has more inventory of stored carbohydrates in their body.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And the person that has a lean body, right, or a lower body fat percentage doesn't have as much storage of inventory in their body of carbohydrates. So that person can eat carbohydrates and utilize it right away. Whereas the person that has a ton of inventory, the new carbohydrate that they're eating just gets stored in the back, right? And they still have a ton of inventory that they need to use. So that's where, the higher body fat percentage you are, the less you should have of carbohydrates, the more you should limit yourself of carbohydrates. And then the leaner you are, the more you can actually have carbohydrates and use it as a fuel source. Your body has plenty of fuel when you're a higher body fat in the storage it has. So you can burn that fat storage, first before using carbohydrates as your fuel source.
Gotcha.
Make sense?
Yes.
So that's where, like, hey, if I'm trying to lose fat, if I'm like a higher body fat percentage, then yeah, I can limit my carbohydrates. There's nothing wrong with limiting them, but you don't need to cut them all the way out.
Yeah.
And that's where, people that cut them all the way out, what are you going to do when you put them back in? So there's a way to do it. And the other thing is that calories in and calories out is the number one priority, right? So if your body needs 2,000 calories and you go to 1,800, you're below your needs, right?
Yeah.
You're in a deficit of calories. So you will burn fat no matter what you're eating, right? So you can still lose weight eating carbohydrates.
Yeah.
You just have to cut calories. And that's where I think people get confused, or they get scared, or they just don't believe that you can lose weight with carbohydrates in your diet. You can. Your calories just have to be the right amount.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah. You had told us in class one day how if a man ate 2,500 calories worth of Twinkies and went down to 1,800 calories worth of Twinkies, he would still lose weight, even if he was just eating Twinkies.
Right. And there's stories about that. There's actually studies that people have done that, right? Is it healthy to do that? No. Right?
Yeah.
And so even that brings up a great point about carbohydrates. So people ask about, like, what's better, white rice or brown rice, right? What's better, bread or, whole wheat bread or this or that, right? the amount of carbohydrates is what's important for fat loss.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking to be healthy, then the brown rice is healthier. The whole wheat is healthier. The sweet potato is healthier than the white potato, right? And I don't even know if that's necessarily true or a valid thing to say. But if you need a half a cup of carbohydrates in a meal,
Mm-hmm.
right? You could have a half a cup of brown rice or a half a cup of white rice, and it's still the same amount of carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to be healthier and you want to have more fiber and you want to add vitamins and minerals, then the brown rice probably has more of those things and more health benefits than the white rice.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with so a Pop-Tart and fruit, right?
Yeah.
They might have the same amount of sugar,
mm-hmm.
right? But the pineapple is probably better for you.
Yeah.
Right? It has antioxidants in it. It has, it comes from the earth, right? So, I mean, nowadays people are scared of eating fruit.
Yeah.
Right? Or I get, are carrots okay?
Yeah.
To eat? And it's like, carrots are a vegetable, man. They're, they might have a little bit more sugar, but that's not what people are gaining weight from,
Mm-hmm.
And, I just think people are just so confused and so misinformed. And there's so much information out there that they're taking like all this stuff and like just, going nuts with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like overboard with, I can't eat carrots, but then, but then they're going and doing something other, crazy stuff that, that's what you have to be more concerned with, not the carrots.
Mm-hmm.
So, a Pop-Tart compared to a fruit, your body knows sugar as sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So whether the sugar's coming from a fruit or the sugar's coming from a Pop-Tart, it's still sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So if your body can't handle sugar and you have a higher amount of body fat, the pineapple is probably just as bad as the Pop-Tart, right? If you're leaner and you can handle that kind of sugar after a hard, intense workout, you could probably get away with having a Pop-Tart in the specific amount that you need for that meal and still lose weight. Right? So if you cut calories to a specific amount, whether it's Twinkies, right?
Yep.
That's where, so people, Weight Watchers, right? People go on Weight Watchers. They've been going on it for years. And they count points. So it's portion control. Now, some people save all their points and eat a pizza.
Yeah.
Right? And they still lose weight.
Mm-hmm. Is
that healthy?
No.
Probably not. Right?
Yeah.
But that's what they taught them. They taught them portion control. Now, there's another, Weight Watchers has like a core system that you can't do that. You have points, but there's certain foods that you have to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that for fat loss, it's the amount of food that you're eating. You don't have to cut carbs. You can and you will see some fat loss, but are you going to be able to live like that?
Yeah.
And why not learn how to cut portions of all of it? So have half the amount of steak, have half the amount of sweet potato, have half the amount of avocado, and then load up on your vegetables like we're doing in the challenge. I think that that's a better route to take. That way your body knows how to, eat all the macronutrients and you don't have to like remove one.
Yeah.
And the one that you're removing is like the main source of our energy.
Yeah.
So that's really what I think. And, there's plenty of people that have seen results with numerous different things. I just, from my years of seeing it, I don't think that cutting carbs is the answer for people.
Yeah.
I think carbs are something that you need in your diet. I think that you need to learn how to eat them because they're not going away. And you're never going to not eat carbs, right? And you should learn to eat fruit and eat sweet potatoes and eat brown rice and, and just, use that stuff for your fuel and and just get healthy about your eating instead of just like removing stuff out of your diet,
Yeah.
right? If anything, people should be removing like, the junk food first.
Mhm.
So, don't, even after the holidays, don't remove carbs, remove all the shit food, remove all the junk food, the cookies, the cakes, the alcohol, the whatever, right?
Mhm.
If you remove all that, you don't have to remove
Yeah.
sweet potatoes. That's not what's causing you to gain weight.
Mhm.
So I just think that people do these things that are too drastic right away.
Mhm.
At the tail end of a diet, can you really cut your carbs out and see great results? Yeah. But do you need to do it right after the holidays?
Yeah.
No, you don't. It's like, it's too overwhelming to do. I don't think it's worth it to do that.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah.
So carbohydrates. We're talking about carbs. There's some questions we answered, right?
Yep.
We don't have any other ones. And so this is our first podcast, right? How do you feel?
I'm good now.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Wasn't that bad,
No.
right?
Yeah.
Do you want to sing a little Maroon
No.
5? We could put
I'm
Maroon
good.
5. No,
I'm good.
All right.
I'm gonna pass.
All right. So episode 1. Let us know what you think, and if you have any other questions, please let us know. All right.
See ya.
See ya. Cool.
Whew.